Welcome back to Eight Immortals Wing Chun, Seafood Devon Fan. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most important aspects of your Kung Fu in general, for Wing Chun specifically, and that's finding your true center, which is what we're going to work on. Working on the external aspect first. So before I kind of get to that piece, you have to just have a basic understanding of the center line theory, which drives Wing Chun. So the center line is like a imaginary line that goes through your center and also through your opponent's center. That is in the system the thing that you kind of pivot your system around, the thing that kind of creates that balance. So the reason the center line is so important from a physiological perspective, all the things that are kind of vital to you, whether it's your eyes, your throat, your solar plexus, your abdomen, your groin, all those things kind of run along the center line. So that's why if you look at the traditional stance and all those things, designed to protect that. In addition to that, it's also important when you're talking about offense, because in Wing Chun we're kind of seeking to control your opponent's center, to control their energy through capturing that center. So one of the things, the Mukianzhong, the wooden dummy, and in fact the fundamental teaching of it, is it teaches you how to approach your opponent and how to gain control of that center by coming and directing your attacks through the center, and also by always moving to what we call the blind side in the Wing Chun. So this is actually we'll have a separate dummy tutorial, but this is actually the external side, okay, of of my opponent's arm bridge I'm approaching here. So when I'm here and I'm on the outside, this energy here, because I'm on the outside, is actually controlling my opponent's center through here. So that's kind of the basics of the center line idea. If you remember in a previous video when I was talking about your stance and having that feeling of something pulling up from your crown that stretches you out, really that's where that actual line, if you want to think of it as a line running through your body, so that when I would pivot, I'm kind of pivoting back and forth around that line. Okay, so I actually made discoveries working through this process over the years on my own. I have a little bit of a different approach to it through Eight Immortals Wing Chun that I'm going to bring to you right now. And instead of kind of focusing on a line, what we're going to be doing today is kind of focusing on finding your true center, which is different than a line. So that's why I'm going to talk, kind of walk you through that process. Now, what I want you to remember is, as you're working through this is something it's going to require you're going to have to be discovered on your own for yourself. I'm showing a way, so this is not the way, a way of kind of doing this. You're going to discover your own things as you're working. Doesn't belong to me, it's going to belong to you. Okay? So some people I found have a head start in this process. So one of my students right now, he played rep basketball, and he has an amazing agility and understanding of his own body already. So he already has this concept. Then it's just applying what he already knows, applying it into Kung Fu. But he already has the concept. Other people have a head start maybe because you practice yoga or dance. There's different ways you can kind of find this what I'm talking about. But the way I'm breaking it down is going to be specific to kind of how you apply it with Wing Chun, how you apply it with Kung Fu. So some of you may have already heard the concept, 6 harmonies concept. Okay, so it's a Kung Fu concept and Kung Fu idea. Basically, what it's talking about is how one part of your body is connected to another. So your hands and your feet, those two things are connected. The motions should be connected. Your elbows and knees, your elbows. So when I'm applying elbow technique, it's also connected to what's happening with my knees, my shoulders, and my waist. Those things are also connected. Okay, so the problem is when you're trying to learn these things, actually, if you try to break down each component, just one thing trying to connect to another, you're going to find there's something missing. Those two things is very, very difficult, especially if you're talking about complex movements, to make them all connect together. There's one thing that pulls them all together. And that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about this true center. So now how to find and identify this, which is what you have to do before you can start to work with it. So we've talked about that vertical axis that kind of goes through you into the ground, roots into the ground. Also, there's a horizontal axis, okay, that you pivot forward and backwards on. Those things are, you can call them imaginary lines. They connect at what I'm referring to. So some people refer to this as dantian, the lower dantian. This is kind of finding it a specific way. So what I want you to try to do, we can do this together, is, well, actually one useful tool is we're going to use an old, very ancient Qigong exercise. So just as you take a breath in, so you're inhaling through your nose, exhale through your mouth. As you do that inhale, what I want you to do is draw those 2 points together, and as you draw them together, they're going to meet at a point in the center. Same thing, actually, instead of just thinking about the 2 points, all around you are the radiating points, and you're going to pull them all together. You're going to focus on pulling and find where that location is within you. For you, it's going to be different than within me, of where that center exists. The center around all the other things, where all things move and rotate. Okay? So when you breathe in, you're pulling all those points together, bring them together with your breath and a focus. It's somewhere way down here. As you exhale, it's bringing that energy together, and you're gonna, it's within you, it's almost like you can think of it like a golden ball. And that, when you bring all that energy together, you can feel, actually you can make it, it starts to kind of spin. It has its own internal energy, okay? That becomes, when you can tap into that almost like a gyroscope, it becomes the thing that you can then move. All your motions become connected. This is not just connected to my feet. Actually, there's 1,000 different connections that happen when you're moving when your motions are in harmony. And they're all connected, all pulled, almost like 1,000 lights are going off when this happens, and through your joints, through your muscles, or everything else. Those things pull together from here. It creates that connection so that then you can use that energy to apply power to. The reason that power is so important is because in Wing Chun, okay, I've spoken before about how this is a close infighting system. So what that means is, unlike a system where coming far away, doing a big wind up to apply power from here, Wing Chun is going to asking you to be able to apply power from that close away, okay? Just not from winding up, but from that internal engine. That internal engine is kind of what powers all the motions, powers all those movements. The reason it's different to have this true center as opposed to a center line, so the center line is talking about vertical axis. So that makes sense if you're perfectly upright and you can have this pull here, you can rotate around here. But then what happens to my vertical axis suddenly when I'm on the ground fighting? I get knocked down, now I have to fight from the ground. Suddenly then the vertical axis is not as meaningful. However, when you can locate this, when you're at this true center, then all of a sudden actually on the ground, standing up, whatever position I'm in, doesn't matter because everything is moving around that center, all right? So, like I said, it's not so something you're gonna find just this second by hearing about it. I'm just trying to point the way to it. So another way, so if you find the Qigong exercise isn't really meaning anything to you, another way you can try to do this is even just, so moving and shifting your weight on the spot and try to find where that center of balance is. So if you think about it like a gyroscope that you can move around, sometimes that will help you to do this. If you have another art so yoga, whatever that you already feel you're already comfortable with, or even sport, whatever, sometimes you can use that and then try to use those movements and try to find something you feel more comfortable you can try to find. So for me it's Kung Fu, but people actually, as a coach swimming as well, and swimming actually has something similar where you're rotating as well. It's a similar idea of finding your core there, okay? They actually all have similarities. The only difference with Wing Chun with Kung Fu that I'm talking about here is then it goes from not just moving around this center, it's how to generate power from that place. That's something that's different, that's a little bit unique, okay? But it informs everything that you do from then on in. Also, when you have that connection, when you can kind of turn those lights on, then those 6 harmonies, so your shoulders and your waist working together, all those things are kind of where we create that in-close power. So, as a kind of cliche, if you think about Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch, that all comes from Wing Chun, okay? That hitting from using your whole body structure. So you try to hit something up close from 1 inch away. Actually, my Sifu always said, actually 1 inch is cheating. It's supposed to be 0-inch punch. You can generate power from right there. You try to do that just using arm muscles or wind up or whatever other kind of energy generation form you're trying to do, you're going to find it's not possible to do so. When you can tap into this engine, it's like an internal engine, okay? When you can tap into this engine, the energy comes, it's the reason you're able to generate tremendous force from a short distance is because it's using all those muscles, all those joints, everything turns into one thing. It's just like turning on a switch, boom, it can explode out, okay? That comes from accessing this. It seems like there's no movement going on, actually it's tremendous movement. So that's this concept. Now, finding it again, you can work on it. I challenge you to go find different ways of doing this. So for me, if you're gonna do it just using Kung Fu motions, you go back and begin again the work we were talking about when I find your basic stance. So from your basic stance, then the only question is, then you just try to find that internal. You may be able to do this staying still. You may be able to need to move slightly to do this, so you're gonna try to find that internal space. Try to pull that energy. Find out where that motor, where that energy is coming from, okay? Amazing thing is, okay, when you can access this, when you access this this ball, when you can start to spin it, it generates energy all by itself, okay? Becomes your own source of internal energy that you can apply. You can apply to all the different motions, whether kicks, punches, elbows, doesn't matter, all right? Then all the techniques become an extension, is how you're expressing this energy. So again, man, I wish I had step-by-step, here's exactly how you find and access this. All I can do is kind of point that way. And I encourage you, don't just try the suggestions I have. Know that you can access this and try to find your own way of finding it. You can try the ways I'm suggesting. You can try to find your own ways. How will you know? Maybe it's a reasonable question, okay? You can say, how will I know if I have access to this or not? Honestly, it's exactly like that moment. Hopefully, I make assumption that you can ride a bike, all right? But everyone has that moment when you're struggling. All of a sudden, it's like magic. You're not doing anything different. All of a sudden, you're floating along on your bike. You learn to ride the bike. You learn how to create that balance. Just like those things, when you have it, you have it. So you don't need to. You'll just realize that you have it. You're floating along, no question about it. Okay. Then it just becomes the fine tuning of how you're actually. Just like you become a better cyclist, once you have this engine, then it's how you apply that energy. Okay. Many thousand different ways of applying it. So we're going to stop with that because it's fundamental. I really want you to kind of focus on that piece first. You can do it through your stance, you can do it through doing Qigong, you can do it in your own, using your own motions. Finding this center, it applies to any form of movement you'll find when you have it. Okay? The next section we're going to be doing is actually, this is almost what I call external harmony. The next section is going to be talking about internal harmony. Equally important, but that's using Neidan. It's a totally different approach. So didn't want to confuse by putting too many things together. That's going to be the next section. Okay? And I know at some point someone's going to say, you know what, lesson 3 already, still haven't thrown a punch. So that's very true. If you're trying to learn something, if you want to come here, you're just trying to learn how to hurt people, then it's the wrong place, okay? if you actually want to learn what I'm trying to impart to you, actually to me, Kung Fu is sacred to me. Wing Chun is a sacred art. And what I'm trying to pass on to you is what is sacred about it, what is important, what is meaningful about it. So if you just want to learn how to, techniques to hurt people, this is not the place. You can go somewhere else. If you do, you're actually you're here because you want to learn real Kung Fu. That's what I'm trying to teach you. So if that's the case, then I'm, honored to be your humble guide. So until next time, keep practicing, keep focused on finding your own way, keep focusing on your movement, getting comfortable with the movement, getting comfortable with the stance. We're gonna come back next time, we're gonna work on the internal harmony, and after that, it's how to put this stuff into motion, okay? All right.